Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing okay and excited for another day. If you could all hear me, let me know which session you are joining. Is it your 12th session of BESA or have you skipped anything? Anyone who has joined all 12, let me know. Anyone who had to skip it for some reason, let me know that too. And we'll quickly get started. For me, I have joined all 12, so I would say plus one for me. I have joined all 12 sessions, and probably a lot of others have also joined it. Turk Dent Clinic, thank you, Parna, 12 session. Yeah, exactly. Jose, good morning. And we are having an interesting round today. I can't believe it is 12th week. We've started this journey to help you with some technical knowledge and some behavioral skills, and we are in the 12th week. Hopefully, we would be learning a lot also today. And we may take a pause because it's a Q4 approaching, and we are having a lot of work related commitment. But we would be launching next batch of BESA program into January probably next year. So we'll go and talk about today's session. Let me add to the screen Sharique. Sharique is going to help us today with the mock interview. So good morning, Sharish. How are
Hi,
you
folks. Good
doing?
morning, everybody. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, we hear you fine. If you
Okay.
could quickly introduce yourself, then we will
Mm.
quickly get started.
Sure, Ashish. Thank you. So yeah, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sharique. I am part of the same team as Ashish. I'm also one of the technical trainers here at Amazon. I'm based in London and been with AWS for the last, I think, about 6 years now. I joined a team back in India in Bangalore. Worked as a DevOps tech lead there for about 2 years, and then took this internal transition, moved to London to become a technical trainer. And since then, I have been teaching cloud to the world.
Great.
Thank you.
Can you brief little bit about your interview journey? Because I think you have like 100 plus or more than 200 plus interviews taken in AWS.
That's interesting. Yes, I mean that's actually is an interesting journey. I have taken interviews before in other companies as well where I have worked. But Amazon, it has just gone to a different level. We call that raising the bar. So it has, it has literally raised the bar for me personally as well. So yeah, what I have done, I think I have approximately somewhere in the line of 200 interviews I have internally, and that's not an official figure as well because when I was in India, what we used to do was we will do these walk-ins. I used to travel a lot
Hmm.
to all these major cities of India and go to these major colleges, and we will do have one full day drive where we are taking
Okay.
training sessions for 100 plus people, candidates, and then kind of hiring a few of them. So it used to be crazy, but used to be very interesting. And you have a team and you go there. So yeah, that was there. That was a first exposure. I was in the technical panel, and then when I came here, I took a number of interviews. Here, I would say, in this team, things were, I would say, very interesting in a different perspective. That gave me
Hmm.
the technical details and to kind of conduct the interview, how to, kind of evaluate, because Amazon has a very different process of at least from the companies where I have taken interviews. It's a different way of evaluating people, and the way we hire, it's a little bit different. In fact, that's something we will
Yeah.
discuss today as well. In here, one very interesting thing happened in this team in London is that I was taking interviews for a lot of people from a lot of different geographies. So Middle East and Europe and London, of course, UK in general. So that was a very interesting journey to which is still going on, by the way. It's just that we are not taking too many interviews at the moment. But the journey is really, really fantastic when you get to see people from all parts of the world. You interact. So that is also a learning process for you as an interviewer.
Agree on that. Yeah, I mean, so it's
Yes.
always learning, and when you hear different perspective from people, and sometimes I ask the same question and I get three different answer, and that
Yes.
also gives me a clue that okay, this could be also one possibility. So it's always a learning process
Exactly.
too.
That's there.
Thanks for that. We have Prasad also. I'll quickly add him into the stage, and then we would go with the candidate so that we would have a mock interview and then analysis of it. Hey, Prasad, good to have you here.
Hey Ashish, hey
Prasad,
Sharique.
can you share a little bit on the interview side? Like, obviously, we will talk with Sharique, but like, what interview process on a general level is for solution architect?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, like I have given my interview as solution architect, and I have taken a lot of interviews as solution, for solutions architect. The first is generally the technical screen that happens about it lasts for an hour. It depends upon team to team. We generally try and combine first and second phone screen. Uh, Either it's a 90-minute session, which in which we evaluate candidate technically for around 45 minutes and then 45 minutes for the LP session, or we can have two separate technical screens. But that's the whole phone screen. In
Hmm.
one part of it is technical alignment, that is your functional fit to the role that you are applying for. Like for example, in the team I am, it's a Microsoft workload specialist team. Or you might be applying for, let's say, database solutions architect. You might be applying for, like as of now, AWS is hiring a lot for AI/ML solutions architect. So depending upon the specialty, that will be your functional fit. And then the other part of technical screen is a high level alignment with the Amazon leadership principles. So yeah, anyone who has not heard about Amazon leadership principles, feel free in Google. You will find a lot of content of it over the internet.
And as a
And once,
candidate, you need to.
sorry, Sharik.
As a candidate, you need to Google and you need to
Oh
find
yes,
out.
as a candidate, there is no way you can
You have to. You have to prepare on that.
sit on an
Exactly.
interview at Amazon without knowing about Amazon LPs, as we call it, right?
No,
We
it's
used to have
clear.
14 when I joined, and now we have around 16. We introduced two of them in around 2021. And
Great.
after that, the challenge actually starts. You think that the screening is done, then it's all good, but that's when the real challenge, at least for me, happened, which was a five
Yeah,
interviews back to
I
back. Now,
agree
at
on
least it
that.
is good
Mhm.
that we have it over a couple of days. But at that time, when I was giving, it was five interviews on one day, back to back. We have some break in between, but that in that interviews, it is 80% behavioral, all leadership principles. There will be a small technical component to it, but Amazon does not hire for a specific role. Amazon hire for the long term cultural fit with the company. So the role that you have been hired for might be there for 2 years or 3 years. But in case, even if the role does not exist, you should be able to be aligned with any part of the Amazon, not just AWS or Alexa or Prime Video or like retail. It's about, if you're culture fit for the Amazon, then you're a good hire. So that's what we look into mainly.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you. Now we'll add Pawan to the call, who has volunteered to be the mock candidate, and I am so happy to have him here. We had the conversation out of the means we came to know each other with BESA program. He is a avid learner. You can always find him in BESA program talking about it. And Pawan, I like the way you have dressed up even for the mock interview. Welcome and happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Assis, for this opportunity, and thank you, Prashad, and great to hear from Sariq and being interviewed. I got this almost one day of notice, and Assis has insisted that don't prepare anything. I told I have not been interviewing for long, and so yeah, that's the background. But yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, means you do not. We are not going to grill you as much as we do into a actual interview, but we will go up to that level. But the idea is here is learning, so hopefully everyone would learn from it and would be a good experience. And I appreciate Pawan you taking time and effort, because it's not easy to be on live interview and be there on YouTube for the live so that people could see what you did right and what you could did wrong, kind of a stuff. But yeah, appreciate that. And I will not take much of the time now, and I let Sharik and Pawan talk to each other. Sharik and Pawan, we had a call yesterday just to have a level set of understanding, and now we will hand it over to Sharik and Pawan. Sharik, if you could brief that what position you are interviewing him for in a brief, and like a mock position, and then talk about like which round it is, and then you can go on with your question. So, audience, it would be a 30-minute round of a question an answer, and then the remaining part Sharique would do analysis of it. And Pawan intentionally may do a mistake, may not do a mistake, it depends purely. But analysis and both the section about interviewing itself and analysis is important. So we'll go through that. All the best, Pawan. All the best, Sharique.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Ashish. Thank you. And welcome, Pawan. And as I have said earlier, this is very courageous. So congratulations to for doing this, and thank you so much for volunteering. It's not an easy thing to do. See, interview themselves are tough. They are nerve wracking, and doing this kind of interview where you have not just one or two people, but like an entire audience to listen to, it is really
Yeah.
commendable. So thank you for that. Now, coming back to just for everybody's benefit, I'll just do a quick, sort of I'll help understand everybody that what exactly we are going to do. So, what we will do, we'll do a quick introduction in terms of what you do in your current role. And then we will go into that interview mode where I'll ask you, probably we'll go to 4 or 5 questions. And we will, well, whatever best you think, you answer in the best possible manner, whatever you think. And then I will ask you some follow-up questions, and there will be 1 or 2 questions towards the end. What I will try to do, put in for the LPs, because normally we have, as Prasad mentioned and Ashish mentioned as well, we generally have these initial screening rounds where we evaluate your technical ability based on the role we are hiring. But as Prasad also mentioned, that roles are not the major concern because they keep on changing. So the bigger question we generally try to answer is how culturally fit you are when it comes to Amazon culture, Amazon leadership principles. That is a very, very important component of you being hired or anybody being hired. Now, one interesting thing about LPs I just want to mention before we start is that we talk about leadership principles. We always talk in the context of AWS or Amazon. But very important point about LPs, if you look at them, they are going to help you in any company on this planet. It's not just about Amazon. Like if you look at this, it's all about being a better or a good professional person, somebody who can, wherever you are working, you are helping, and you are helping your organization grow, and you are helping yourself grow. So because see, I'm this is a public forum, and not everybody is going to interview for Amazon. Not everybody will get to see the roles as well, right? So it's like all about the opportunity, and then you get for the role. So it doesn't really matter whether you interview for Amazon or somewhere else. These are going to help you. That's what I wanted to convey.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, right. Okay, so before we start, just one question, Pawan. If you can just briefly, for everybody's benefit, you can tell, like, your overall background, some tech details, what you have been doing at the moment, and currently what you're doing in your current role. Just we'll start from there, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Sariq, for having me here. I am having experience of over 17 years in IT, and for last over 7 years, I am into application architecture, solution design, and solution architecture. So currently, I am holding the role of. So I'm working for Tata Consultancy Services, and as a associate consultant. And in my current engagement, I'm working for one of the automotive giant here in UK. And in my current role, I am working as a solution architect
Hmm.
for digital transformation procurement area. And this has changed very recently. Uh, for last over 4.5 years, I am working for this client, and my role was, or my responsibility was, to design solutions on the cloud platforms, which was AWS and GCP. Previously, I was working for IBM, and I was working as subject matter expert there for their one of the product suite. And my I started my journey in IT sector as product development company in as a software engineer. So that's my background.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Perfect. Thank you. And I could hear that in the process you did mention about that you're working currently on cloud, and you're helping basically migration. And you did mention about AWS as well. So you have familiarity with AWS. You're working on AWS services. Is that the right assumption?
Uh, I have worked. I started working on AWS in 2018 timeframe, and when I joined this engagement, here more work was done on GCP platform. So
Okay.
I have and of course AWS as well. However, the GCP was more than AWS, but my prior interest was in AWS because I started working on cloud first time on AWS. So my inclination was always there, and I started learning more. I joined Besa, and that's where I started growing myself on AWS front as well. Yeah.
All right, perfect. That's great. That's great. So, how about this? What we will do as part of this interview, we will do a sort of a role play. Okay, and that role play will go like this. I am a customer. Okay, I'll give you my scenarios, my requirements that I'm what exactly I want to do, and then you can consider yourself a solution architect, or you can consider yourself a consultant. Basically, you're somebody who's going to help me migrate and host on AWS platform. That is the kind of the premise. That is the context what we are going to talk about. And in the process, I'll ask you a few questions, like as a customer, as I said, as a customer, I'm going to ask you questions. Where can I do this? How can I do this? What is this? Let's say A versus B. Those kind of questions we will tackle. We'll try and understand.
Sure.
Okay, ready?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started with a very, very basic, very, very fundamental question. I have an application, right? Plain and simple. I have an application. It's a mid-size, not a very big enterprise level application. It was a small POC few months back, but now it has been kind of converted into a business application. We have development teams who are writing their code bases, and within, let's say, next 1 or 2 months, we are expecting that application to be ready, and we would need a platform where we need to go ahead and put the production environment there. So I want to understand from you, how can AWS help me there? How can I host this application on AWS when the time comes?
Oh, thank you so much for this explanation of the requirement, Sariq. Now, I would like to know, as you mentioned that currently you have done the POC, a proof of concept. So, are you saying that that proof of concept has been done on a non-cloud platform, on-premise? I mean, what is?
Let me give you a brief idea. So we didn't do on cloud. We have couple of we have a small team of, let's say, 5 developers, and let's say they are doing some application. They're using, I don't know the exact app, the language. It could be Java, it could be .NET, but doesn't really matter whatever language is. But we have done it on our local on-prem machine. But now we want to, of course, because our organization as a whole, it is going towards cloud, and we have this cloud first, initiative. So from now onwards, anything which we want to do, we want to do on cloud. And of course, we have heard that it's always easier on cloud compared to on-prem. So that's where I would need your help.
Yeah, sure. So, as part of that, I'll first of all try to also understand your domain of business. Is it which type of domain your solution is, or your application is, and what sort of problem it is solving in terms of business? What kind of problem it is solving to the business, and how critical the business is, or how critical the application is in terms of, does this business does this solution or application need to be available 24/7? So those kind of things in terms of criticality of availability and all that. So in brief, if you can just explain, that will help me to
Sure thing.
think through.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the last question first. We don't have that 24/7 availability just yet. It might be in the future, and in fact, it will be in the future. Imagine this to be a very small application. We are catering to the financial services industry, where we have this application which is working helping them configure the payment gateway. I mean, think of, if you're familiar with Stripe or Razorpay in India, right? So it's very similar on those lines. So that is what we are
Okay.
doing. And as I said,
Okay.
at the moment, it's very small. We have just we don't have any customer base as such, but we have some potential engagements there. That's what we have at the moment.
Okay. And I don't want to assume anything. So should I consider that it's kind of a three-tier architecture, where we have at least user interface, and then we are having application layer, where we have business logic layer, and then we are having databases. Do you have that kind of a structure? Just to understand, so that I can plan for the strategy which is most suited for your solution or your application.
Yes, we do. We do have a front end, we have a back end, which is like the application logic, and of course, we are using a database. In fact, on database front, I would like to understand your help, to get your help there, because we are not sure about whether we are going to go for SQL or no SQL. I've heard we have so many different kinds of databases, and there are benefits for each one of them. So probably that's one of the things we are going to talk about. But yes, it is a three-tier architecture.
Okay, yeah, that really helps. So, so it gives me a basic understanding of your your requirement, and also I can map that requirement to a technical, I can visualize the technical structure or technical architecture. In terms of, I can visualize the 3 tier architecture which you are having now. uh, Before I jump to the actual solution, I would rather go and talk about the design considerations or kind of architectural considerations before I jump to the actual solution. Now, uh, so one thing which is nowadays, which is very prominent and prevalent in terms of architecture, is about have your solutions or have your services loosely coupled, right?
Mhm.
So to ensure that we should go for microservice architecture. However, because you have already developed a solution, your team has already developed a solution, I'm not sure whether it's a monolithic or they have already considered it's to be in microservices architecture. So if it is, should I assume that they are in monolithic architecture, and then they're
We
or
we have
okay,
not got into that yet, so I'm
okay,
not sure if it is a microservice, if it is a monolithic.
okay.
I have no idea on that at the moment.
Yeah, may not be the right question for you. Probably I need to talk to the technical team when we go more in detail. But what i'll
Mhm.
i'll think in at this level is, we should be, if at all, once me and my technical team do the end-to-end application discovery or solution discovery, then we'll come to know what sort of architecture your team has followed.
Mhm.
If it is not microservices, then definitely I'll advise that we should be breaking that monolithic application in microservice architecture, and then plan to deploy in a container form. So AWS has multiple options for that. We can go for, I mean, I'd like not to talk that much about AWS services. However, I'd like to say that capabilities provided by AWS. So we are
Mhm.
having ECS and EKS. Depending upon that, whether you want to go for serverless, I mean, we don't want to provision servers on our own. We can take those decisions,
So
and
we
then
have
I'll explain.
Let
Yeah.
let me stop you there. We do have
Okay.
containers. What we are doing currently is actually a container platform. In fact, this application what I'm talking about is actually a Dockerized or containerized application. So we do write our code base and we convert that into an image, and then we run that. But everything is local at the moment. So are you telling me that if I move to AWS, I don't need to use Docker? I can use AWS's solutions?
You can use Docker, but AWS has its way of its own managed services. So AWS has ECS, Elastic Container Services, and they have EKS as well, where you can use Kubernetes. So if you're having too many, like tomorrow, if you want to add more services, to add more functionality, it's better to use EKS as well, because their Kubernetes will take care of your management in terms of scalability and all sort of maintenance in terms of patching and everything. So that's one solution. We are having ECS, and ECS also, if you want to provision your servers, then you have that option. And if you want to use do not want to provision, you can use Fargate for that. So these solutions are available at your disposal from AWS. So
Mhm.
we can go for, depending upon, again, we'll do the application discovery, but yeah, depending upon that, we can take a final decision in terms of design. Yeah. So that
Okay.
is the from
Mhm.
container side. Should I talk about database, because you have mentioned about you need help,
We
or
will
what?
we will talk about it
Okay.
everything. But before that, I have a quick question for you. You mentioned I could gather ECS, I could gather EKS, and I think you mentioned something called Fargate as well in that picture. So what I'm assuming is that these are the different services to help you to put container workloads on AWS. Am I assuming that correctly?
You're right. Yeah, you're
Okay.
right. So
So the
Fargate
question I
is,
have is,
yeah.
no, wait a second. The question I have is like, which one should I go for? I mean, I don't know. I'm running containers. I know that, but I don't know, like which one. What is ECS? What is EKS? What is Fargate? Can you give me a brief idea on that, please?
Yeah, so about EKS, I mentioned that it's Elastic Kubernetes Services. So it
Okay.
allows you. So if you want to, and it's recommended, I would say it's a best practice if you're having hundreds of containers, right? So it's very difficult to manage. So it's better to use such services where Kubernetes, here it's a managed service by AWS. It will allow you to manage those services on your behalf, so you don't have to manage that. Now Fargate is having it's again, like, you don't need to provision, but it does not provide you that Kubernetes based services, but it's again serverless. You need to set up few things. However, it manages a lot of stuff on its own. You don't need to provision your servers. Now ECS is where you need to ECS ECS with Fargate is an option, and ECS with the EC2 instance is an option. So ECS with EC2 instance is where you need to provision your servers. So that's up to you. Again, there is a cost differences. If you have to provision, if you're provisioning the servers, then you can control. Okay, you know that you and your technical team should be knowing what sort of provisioning you want to do. So you have more control, but at the same time you have more worry as well. So there are pros and cons, and these are the trade-offs available depending upon your actual requirement. We can decide, but at this moment I would suggest that if you're having very small application, let's not go for Kubernetes or EKS. We can probably go for Fargate. At the moment, it's you mentioned that's a small application, so that is uh, that should be, I think, my primary recommendation at the moment, looking at your application size and kind of context you have given to me.
But is it possible to, let's say, if I choose Fargate now, and if I after a few months or let's say a few quarters, can I move to EKS? Can I do that? And how easy or difficult it would be?
Yeah, that's a great question. We can do that. However, at this moment I cannot say what is the I mean what kind of cost and other or in terms of technical difficulties, what sort of
Mm-hmm.
challenges we are going to face. But yeah, it should be easy transfer, I believe, or sorry, easy migration, I believe. But at the moment, I cannot 100. I'm not 100% sure what sort of challenges we're going to face.
Okay, not a problem. So yeah, we talked about this ECS and EKS. What I want to understand is, where do I put my data? Um, like, because what I understand is containers are ephemeral, right? So you need to have, and again, just so you know, my application is stateless. It's not stateful. So what are the options available on AWS again?
Sorry, you say that your data is stateless or
No, my
stateful?
application is stateless, and I would obviously need a place to store my data, right? So I have to have the when I say my application. So if I talk about ECS and EKS, compute is taken care, right? But what about the data? Where do I put my data? What are the options available for storage? See, for storage, what are the options
Okay,
available
so
in
if I talk about the storage, we are having three options. Uh, uh, we are having block storage, we are having object storage, and we are having file storage. So
Mhm.
block storage is where it's a network-based storage. So it's where uh, data is broken into in the form of blocks, but the actual storage on the network. So it depends. It actually does the it's a the you are basically decoupling your storage from network. So sorry, from compute. So that
Mhm.
is the block storage, and it's highly scalable. It's very efficient. Depending upon your requirement, we can finally decide. Now next is object storage. Object storage where the data is actually broken down into objects. So each object, and then every object has its own object ID, and it also contains the metadata, which is data about the data. So it's good for the scenarios where you are reading multiple times. Reading multiple times, but writing. Sorry, I'm. So you in case of scenarios wherein like for example you have to create a data lake or that kind of use case wherein you want
Mhm.
to put the content which you are not going to change. So for static content it's very good. The object storage is very good, and if you want to do a lot of queries, for example you want to create a data lake or things like that, so in those
Mhm.
kind of scenario also this is a great use case to use object storage. And the next is file storage. So
Mhm.
so for block storage, Amazon provides EBS, Elastic Block Storage, and for object storage we have S3 bucket. And for the next one is file storage. We're all familiar with whether Windows NTFS, and then you're mounting your files on Linux platforms. That's all again file storage. So depending upon that, we can choose what data. Now, if you're talking about the stateful data, right? Where
Mhm.
which I believe that databases will come into picture. So definitely that is not recommended to host on containers. So again, you can host your database on EC2 instance, but we also has like AWS also provides you the options like RDS, which is managed service, and you can use that for your stateful database, stateful data, which is I would say in say transactional data, because you're having payment gateway and things like that. So I'm very sure they're going to use those sort of data. So I'll suggest to use RDS in this case probably, but
Hmm.
As you mentioned that, I don't want to jump here again, because the reason is there is a possibility that you might need to use NoSQL databases for your search operations. If load is increasing, there is huge search operations, then better to use something like DynamoDB. If we are talking about in AWS context, if at all we want to use completely cloud agnostic sort of databases, we can go for MongoDB, or corresponding services are available at AWS as well, so we can use
But
those
MongoDB,
databases.
MongoDB, I've heard it's a separate company, right? So it's a different company. So can I host MongoDB on AWS?
Yes, AWS does have its corresponding managed services available in AWS. I forgot the name at the moment, but yeah, that facility is there at
No, that's
AWS.
fine. It's good to know that we have a service which helps us do that. Um, One quick follow-up question on that. So you did mention about, I mean, that is one of the questions I wanted to cover, is that we have these options from relational and non-relational. And you have given me that there are options in relational and in non-relational in AWS. But before that, my question is, how do I choose between the two databases? Like, you mentioned, I think, RDS and DynamoDB as the two options, one being relational, one being non-relational. But as a application developer, as a, let's say, project manager, how do I choose? How do I know which one is right for me?
So if you're already using a database, then you and your team can give me the detail. Like if you're using a database already, like for example, MySQL or Oracle database or SQL Server. So actually, RDS using RDS will be fitting into that use case. However, in the current scenario itself, if you're using NoSQL database already, then we can
Mhm.
see what is the best solution once we migrate to AWS. So depending upon that, we can take that decision. But if
Okay.
your concern is at the moment feeling that the load is less, maybe tomorrow or maybe
Mhm.
for future, I want to future proof my solution. For that, we can think, and then we can take decision. Do you want to change this at the moment? Like for example, if you're using NoSQL, sorry, if you're using SQL database or RDBMS database, but you want to take a solution from that perspective, if in terms of making your solution future proof, then we
Mhm.
can do that analysis and then decide during the migration phase that. But again, that will be some sort of work we have to do, because we have
Mhm.
to that kind of like you need to do code change and things like that. So we'll take that decision whether it's a worthy decision to take or not. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. I think what I'm getting from you is that this is something which we need to take a look at later on, and based on what we are doing, we will do
Yes.
that migration. Thank you, and good to know that we have all the options on AWS. Now, one question I have, which is very important internally for us, as you can imagine, we are catering to the financial services industry, and security is a big concern for us because we have to go through all those. You must have heard of these compliance rule regulations such as FISMA and HIPAA and
Yeah.
GDPR, all of these things. What are some of the general things you do in AWS? Like if you have a workload on AWS, how can I be assured that it is safe? My data is safe, my application is safe, and my customer details are safe. Most importantly, how do I ensure that on AWS? I'm not very
Yeah.
comfortable
So
with that.
absolutely. Yeah. So sorry, just a second.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So for security, it's a great question, and it's very important for all of us to secure our workloads. And to do that, I will recommend to use multi-layer security. Once I say multi-layer security, I mean that you secure workload from periphery till your virtual machines or whatever compute we are using. Now, to start with, at the periphery, we will use uh, next generation firewall, and there are options available for that within AWS. We can use the firewalls which is provided by some third party through marketplace. Also our internal firewalls are also available. Now coming to the mid layer, we have to secure our subnets, and to do that we'll use access control list. Using that we can secure our subnet. And after that, at compute level, let's say we have chosen virtual machines, then we have to ensure that we are using security group and there are proper rules allowed, rules configured at security groups, so that only specific traffic will come inside.
Mhm.
And again, at the virtual machine level, we are going to, or EC2 instance level, in the terms of AWS, we have to ensure that we are having proper patching and things like that. There are no open ports which are not required. There are no unnecessary services running and things like that. So we'll take those into account. Now, in
Mhm.
terms of data, I'll ensure that data in transit and data at rest both are secure. For securing data at rest, will you AWS provides services like KMS for encryption, and we also need to ensure that to the data is secure at transit. We are going to use the SSL certificates,
Mhm.
and so that way we are going to ensure the data is also secure at both at rest and at transit.
Mhm. Okay. So you mentioned SSL. You did not mention TLS. Is it supported or not?
I did not get, sorry.
I mean SSL and TLS, right? These are two mechanisms. So you mentioned about SSL. You
Yeah,
did not mention about TLS. Is it there? Is it supported? Because we
it
use
is.
TSL. We don't use
Yeah,
SSL.
it is supported. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Alrighty. So I think I'm fairly comfortable now when it comes to we can definitely get started and probably we'll see how things go along. I have one kind of a little bit different question for you now. This is again from the Amazon leadership principles. I want to understand, and again for your benefit, let me explain. This is where we expect answers in the STAR format, where STAR stands for situation or the task pertaining to the question, what actions you took, and what was the end result of that. So that's like a sort of a storytelling I need you to do on the situation. And I want you to think of a situation or something happened to you in, it could be any company, current company, previous role, any role in your career, where you challenged the status quo. There was something being done in the company. Everybody accepted that it was being done for the few years now, and then you came in and you said, no, we can do it in a better way, or maybe we can do it in a different way, which has got some other benefits. And then you tried and you made that changes. So that situation, again, how did it go? Actions, results. Was it successful? Was it not successful? Give me, and try to keep your answer brief, Pawan.
Sure. Thank you, Sariq. So yeah, there was a time when I was working for one of the insurance giant here in UK, and that time I was working as a solution designer for that engagement, and there were multiple different stakeholders in that program. It was a quite complex migration and modernization and upgrade project on IBM product, IBM Enterprise Content Management product suite. So towards the end of that migration, it was not the end, but yeah, towards end of the, so just to give you the context, towards end of the migration we had to take a decision in terms of storage, right? So IBM, that product had its own built-in storage, for which there was no money charged by IBM, because if you have taken the whole package as a product, then you don't need to pay extra for that storage unless your storage
Which, I'm sorry, which product we are talking about here?
at
IBM's?
IBM's enterprise content management has something
I
called
see.
TSM, or Tivoli Storage Manager.
Tivoli.
I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Tivoli. Tivoli
So
is a big
yeah,
suite. So you have monitoring, you have storage, you have number of things.
yes,
Okay. Perfect.
exactly. So that was built in the product, and so we were so suggestion came from the manager, and it was kind of almost in the decision phase that we're going to use AWS storage. Unfortunately, this time AWS was the other side, and and
Mhm.
so my thinking was better to use TSM at the moment. The reason was TSM also provides some built-in capability, which I believe was not available at that moment in S3 bucket, because I'm talking about almost 5 or 6 years back. So
Mhm.
uh, so that decision of using TSM rather than using any other cloud storage was suggested by me, uh, and people who were suggesting AWS specific storage or any other cloud storage, that moment was kind of from the manager side. So it was different, just difference of opinion at the moment, and just I just proposed this, or I just proposed my point that there are two things. One thing is cost. The cost was less. We don't need to pay IBM after, unless the storage and the because they have also archival and other capability in that product. And the second was the built-in capability. which this product provided. So due to that, I was pushing for that, and I had a just put this point in front of the management, and then eventually we went for that. So yeah, I mean that was one scenario wherein we successfully
So
delivered.
let
Yeah.
me let me stop you there. I mean, you said that this was, again, I can, from the explanation what you have given, I can clearly see that there are benefits of using or continue to use that software, Tivoli or IBM suite there. Um, why did your managers did not agree on that? Why did they have different opinion?
So that time there was a because I myself was working on another project where we were migrating a lot of applications towards AWS. So it
Okay.
was a kind of a decision taken without checking the fact. So manager was
All right. So let me understand this correctly. So they had already planned to move to AWS. You pitched in between and you mentioned that no, we don't have to, for everything, we don't have to move to AWS. We can actually use the software, which can help company save money in the long run. That's the kind of
absolutely,
overall picture.
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And you mentioned about the cost factor because again, storage was built in here. You had to pay additionally. You
yes.
talked about some built-in functionality. Do you remember what were some of those specific functionalities?
So one was the archival features, and then there was another built-in capability which there were, yeah, some of the archival specific functionality in terms of so there was some GDPR rule also coming into play that time, and there was some functionality which if we had to use any other, whether AWS or any other cloud provider storage, then we
Mhm.
had to write a lot of custom code to do that, and that
Okay.
was another extra effort as well as cost.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So yeah, that's good. Good. Good one. Thank you. Thank you for. Let me just quickly take a look. I think what we will do, we'll stop now. It's already 9:42 for me. So I think we can stop this interview at this point. So thank you so much for your answers. It was great, and I think we can now move to the next stage where we will do the analysis. Um, Ashish, can
Thank
we
you very
go
much.
ahead or should we wait?
Yeah, please go ahead with analysis. Like we are all listening to Pawan's answer, and he obviously answered lots of things. There was
Mhm.
limited time, so we could not simulate everything. But yeah,
Exactly.
at least technical questions were there and a behavioral question. And now we would go into understanding from Sharique that
Mm.
how he would be analyzing this interview based on the answers given, how it could be improved, what was good, what should he be doing, and what he should be avoiding. And it's purely
Mhm.
Pawan constructive feedback. Nobody is trying to like pull you apart here online. We are trying best of our interest so that everyone learns from it and
Mhm.
everyone becomes a better person at least in the interview process. So that's the
Yeah.
intention. Go ahead, Sharik.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so let me start from very beginning when we started this interview process. And again, for everybody's benefit, I think a lot of you might have noticed that I was typing while taking this interview, while asking you questions. I was actually gathering your responses because this is something we do. Again, this is one of the things which is unique. Again, at least for me, when I compare myself with other companies taking interviews, is that we have to capture the complete response from you as a candidate so that there is no ambiguity right later on, and it all goes into the system, it all goes into the HR system we have for the interview taking process. So any Amazon interview you give, you will find that the on the other side the person, he or she is ferociously typing on the keyboard because we want to make sure that we are taking all the responses in the correct context, and in the best possible manner, of course, because listening, thinking what will be my next question, typing at the same time, it's not an easy thing to do. You try to do it, you will understand, everybody. Right. So yeah, and again, that is something which comes from practice. When you have taken enough interviews where you are in the kind of groove, then it becomes more and more, or what do you call, you become kind of, it becomes your second nature. That's what it has for me, at least for now. So initially we started with, and I asked your background. You mentioned about that 17 years of experience and you're working as an SA. So that was a good thing. That's a really great thing. Very importantly, what I would have expected, Prasad, just keep it a little bit more short. Sorry, Pawan, just a more short. I mean, keep it concise. And generally what we do, especially, you and I, we are in the same bracket. The moment we go beyond 15 years of experience, it's very important. Don't tell or don't mention what we did 10 years back or 15 years back. Stick to, I would say, as for me, the rule of thumb will be last 5 years, right? I will stick to that. Last 2 years, last 5 years, that's good enough because as an interviewer, even you will agree with me, and everybody should would agree. If you have disagreements, please do let me know. Is that I'm interested in what you are now. I'm not interested what you were 15 years back or 20 years back, right? So, and that's again one of the reasons. Even resumes you will find are getting shorter and shorter. We just mentioned last one or two things, and the rest will okay. If you want to know more, just let us know, and I'll be happy to provide all the details. But otherwise, it was good. You did mention some key factors there that you are currently working on cloud. You are working as a solution architect. You are working on enterprise suite. So that is again very very relevant information. It's all boils down to how smartly you convey your relevant information. That's very important, and you did that well, very nicely done, thank you. And then we started with those questions, right? So we talked about that. I gave you that example of the workload I have. You talked about that three-tier architecture. In fact, that's what I was planning to ask that in the form of a question, but you already answered what is a three-tier architecture, that front end, back end. So that is good. That was good. It's always good to have that information. um, One point I noted, you even though, see, you did ask your questions, but you still, I would say, jumped to conclusion a little bit, because you talked about containers. You started talking about ECS and EKS. Till then, I had not mentioned that I'm working on containers. Do you remember that, Pawan?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah. It was
So
in a
I had
flow.
never
Yeah,
mentioned, I just mentioned I have an application. And you, in the process, when you talked about like microservices and all, and a very important point, we generally think of this is a very important point for everybody in this room. Um, we tend to think monolithic is legacy, microservices is modern.
it is not.
That
Yeah,
is not the case. Okay.
yeah,
These are two different ways of designing your software, working with your software, and it can fit for different people in different requirements. It does not have, I mean, don't think that if I'm using monolithic, it's legacy and I should move to microservices.
yeah. It
Not
is not.
every application is meant to be microservices, right? At least not
Agree,
initially. Okay.
agree. Yeah,
Anyway, so yeah, that was one thing. When you jump to that, you started talking about containers, and that's when I thought, okay, since anyways you're talking about containers, so let's focus on that ECS and EKS thing. Okay. One important feedback is that this one, you mentioned about ECS and EKS and Fargate. From a technical person, from somebody who is a consultant, I would expect a more crisp response from you in terms of, like this is what ECS, this is what EKS is, this is what Fargate is. And very importantly, you mentioned that you can't use EKS with Fargate. Sorry, Kubernetes with Fargate. You can actually do that. Okay.
yeah. I mean, I was
Um,
not very sure. Yeah,
Right, right. So that's where it's very important to kind of, if you're not sure, you can tell, okay, I'm not really sure, but I think you can do it this way. That's a trick I can give everybody. Okay. That way, see, we all do that. We have read something 2 years back, 5 years back, and we don't remember. Again, technology is one thing. Again, when I take sessions, when I take classes, one thing which I never do, or which I've kind of, it has become my rule of thumb that I never say it's not possible. Okay. In technology, you can never say it's not possible or it is impossible. And you will see that today it was not possible. Today it is not being done. But few years down the line, few months down the line, now that feature is there. Now that service is available. So never say never, right? That's the idea. So yeah, ECS and EKS. So I would expect a little bit more detail since you moved to containers and you started talking about containers. My assumption is, as an interviewer, that you are comfortable in that area, right? See, this is our human tendency. When we in the interviews, this is also a trick to kind of mold this into your direction. If I'm an interviewee, let's say we reverse the table and you ask me a question, I will purposely put containers. I will purposely put these keywords in your head that you start asking questions on me containers, to me on containers because I'm comfortable, right? So
yeah,
this is a way to bring you to my comfort zone.
yeah.
Okay.
Drive the interview. Yeah,
Drive the interview, exactly, very important point. So anyway, so that was there. It's fine. Same thing with the storage as well. You did start good. You did talk about that block and file and object storage and everything else. But I would have expected a lot more, like for example, the situations, the use cases. And this one over here, I just want for everybody's benefit again, if this is something new to you, uh, please go ahead. I'll put that in the chat. Make sure you read about that from storage perspective, and this is something which is important for irrespective of who you are. Are you a developer? Are you a solution architect? Are you a consultant? Are you a sysadmin, DevOps, SRE? Doesn't really matter. And again, this is something which we need to understand very, very clearly, is that whatever we are doing on cloud, essentially it has come from on-prem.
Yeah.
So on-prem has, and when I say on-prem, I'm referring to on-premises data center-based environments.
Yeah.
Okay, on-premises is not, again, not legacy. Okay, remember that very clearly. A lot of times I've seen that mistake. People start thinking, oh no, no, I'm working on cloud now. I don't work on on-prem. That's not a different thing. That's not something which is, in fact, as a technology person, you will realize that when you work on-prem, you have to be a lot more technical, because
Yeah.
the whole idea of cloud is to abstract away the complexity from you, right?
Absolutely.
Everything, you have to configure a bunch of things on-prem. In cloud, you have a button. You click on the button, you get a load balancer. You click on a button, you get EC2 instance. You click on a button, you get storage, right? So the whole idea is to make it user friendly. So it's not something, it's a win for the business, of course, but as a professional, you have to know the basics. You have to know the fundamentals, right? So that DAS and NAS, I always, I teach about this in classes as well. Make sure you understand that differentiation, because when you understand that, it becomes very easy to have that comparison between, for example, what is EBS volumes, what is instance stores, what is S3, what is EFS, and what is FS. Because see, just to give you one example, EFS, we talked about elastic file system. Again, don't want to go into AWS a lot, but EFS is what? It's just it's something behind the scenes. It's NFS protocol,
Yeah.
right? It's network file system 4.0 and
Yeah.
4.1. That's what technically it is.
Yeah.
So it becomes very easy for you if you understand the underlying or behind the scenes technologies and how, because cloud is all about abstraction, right? It's all about abstraction and converting everything into an API call. That's all cloud is, according to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so that's there. Okay, so one place where you did a little bit digressed from the actual question, you started mentioning about data lakes and lake formation sort of things, which was again not needed at this point. We were just talking about, I have a very small application, I want
Yeah.
to host it, I'm looking for storage places, right? Where can I store that? So uh, I'm a person who doesn't even understand what is a data lake,
Data lake.
probably, right? I'm not from probably big data background. I'm somebody who's completely different, probably from networking, probably from security. So that was a little bit, again, kind of you didn't need to do that. That's what I'm saying, but not a problem. It's not a harm. It's just, again, see, one very important point, by the way, Pawan, and for everybody, it's not something that you did wrong. It's all about what we can do better. It's all about
Yeah.
learning, right?
Yeah.
So that's very important. Um, right. Otherwise, yeah. Then we moved on to SQL. Again, there you mentioned about one thing when we talked about SQL and no SQL. I asked you that specific question, like I'm not able to decide which one to go, right? And you mentioned that we need to discuss and we need to understand what you're using currently. That's fine. That's not incorrect technically. But I was expecting the answer on the lines that, okay, how the major difference between SQL and NoSQL is one of them has got a schema, one of them has got flexible. If you're looking for, depending on what kind of performance your application is looking for, if you have a very huge performance requirements, then probably relational is not a good fit for you. You need to go for non-relational. So those kind of, maybe it doesn't have to be in depth, but maybe two or three
Yeah.
points would have been really good,
I
right?
should have make some pause, I think, because I was continuously talking, so probably some thoughts I could not gather,
Exactly, exactly.
uh,
Now,
which I
pause,
could
see,
have done
pause
better. Yeah.
is easier said than done. I mean, we discuss this a lot because we are sort of public speakers. We take sessions, right? We go on stage. So you will see that pause is one of the things which everybody recommends. Like, take pause, don't speak nonstop, right? You take pause. But let me tell you, it's easier said than done, right? Especially for coming from Indian background. We Indians are expert at kind of talking too fast without stopping, without even breathing, right? I mean, trust me, from me it has
True,
happened.
yeah.
I mean, it has happened. My cousins or my brother, they will say, stop, Sharik, stop, take a deep breath. You can breathe also while talking. So don't worry on that part. Yes, but yes, taking a pause, stopping. A technique what I generally mention is ask for water bottle, take a sip. You did that, right? So that gives you a thought, that gives you that very crucial 2 or 3 seconds to regather your thoughts, right? there is no harm in saying that, okay, let me think about it. Let's say I asked you a question and then you said, let me just think about it, let me gather my thoughts correctly in my head. No problem in telling that. I will be happy to wait and get a more crisp response from you than not waiting and getting a gibberish from you,
Yeah.
right? It's very important. So there is no harm in pausing, in asking the person to wait. Can you give me like 10 seconds? Let me just think about it. And then just have a sip of water or something. Because those, in interviews and when you're public speaking, when you're on stage, these 2 seconds, 5 seconds are very, very crucial. They kind of, make or break things, as we say, right? So yes, that's a good point. So yeah, SQL versus NoSQL was there. Security, you did well. You talked about the services again. We did not have enough time to kind of go into the details, but you started well. You talked about the periphery versus all the internal layers. You did mention security in layers. That is very important. And then you mentioned a few services. You did mention about KMS. You did mention about I believe security groups, right? So which is good, which is a good starting point. And of course, from there on, the direction will be depending on me whether I want you to grill on which part of that, right? So that is there. One thing which you could have mentioned, though, again, like no, not something it's like taking away any points from you, but authentication or access management, right? That's again, it is considered as part of security, and that's a very important part. Like, you're blocking and allowing people to have access.
Yeah.
So that's there. That's an important point. Right. And then we moved on to your LP question, the leadership principle question, right? And I asked you this question about that challenging the status quo. So yeah, your answer was fine. Everything was good. I'm just looking at the points which I can highlight there. I didn't find any problem as such. You started with a situation. You did talk about the action. Probably the result part, but again, we kind of stopped in between. So not to take away any points from you because we stopped there and because of the time factor. But of course, like it's very important to explain the situation slash task, then what actions you took. Generally, at this point, what I do or a lot of us do is that we ask you, a very, very, very crucial question. Um, who is we in here? What was specifically your role? We always work in team, right? And we always have this situation that two or three people are doing all the work, rest are just kind of following along. So who were you? Were you the in charge or were you the one who was following? That's very important to understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that was there again. This will go again in the real interview situations. If I talk about this, is think of it like a trailer. Right, so
Yeah.
we go a lot more in depth. Just to let you know, we have this concept of, internally we call that peeling the onion.
Yeah.
Okay, but one by, if you remember, if you noticed, I asked you on that, like when you talked about that built-in functionality, right? So what do you mean by that? And you did mention about that archival and compliance. So this is one of the ways, because see, it's a storytelling. You can be a very good storyteller, so you can get the story from somebody else, right? So let's say we are talking, we are friends, I had the situation and you borrowed it in your interview process. As an interviewer, how do I understand whether this actually happened with you? You are telling a sort of a something which you faced, or you have heard from it, read it somewhere, and you're just trying to use this in your situation. That's when I ask you follow-up questions, when I ask you kind of drill down into the details. That's when I understand, okay, this is something which has happened to you, and it's not something which you have taken,
Yeah.
right,
It's
from
not
somewhere.
makeover. Yeah.
It's not a made up response.
Yeah.
Very important, yes. And yeah, so again, one very important thing, again, people think that this interview screening process, the first few rounds, and then the LP rounds, we call them in leadership principle rounds, where we ask you this only star questions, that these are technical, these are non-technical. Again, that is not the case. There's a very thin line. It don't think on those lines, because think of it this way: you are an IT professional, you are a technical professional. No matter what questions I'm going to ask you, you will always give me some technical response, right? And if I am also a technical person, which typically I will be, in Amazon, just so you know, managers are also technical. They are also, they have been individual contributors. They are one of the kind of, I have seen some of the highest technology technologically experts in this company. So don't be mistaken. This is something, a common assumption we have, that if, let's say, I'm looking at the designation, this is the hiring manager. Okay, this person is not going to ask me any technical questions. Okay, don't do that mistake. And this is what we tell as well, as a tip, pro tip in Amazon. Think of every single round as a technical round. Okay, that way what will happen, see, it's not, we don't segregate, we don't differentiate between, okay, this is a technical round, this is a non-technical round. We don't generally do that way. Okay, maybe some specific departments will do that, but as long as I'm talking about our own departments, like our technical training and support and dev and solution architect, technical account managers, all these roles we are talking about, we never segregate as such in these, right? So we always have these questions like that. Yeah, that's about it, I think. Now, let me tell you, and this is again for everybody's benefit, what happens next. Anybody would like to know that?
Yes.
What happens afterwards?
Yeah.
Right? So what happens is very simple, very important. This is just one round. You will have 5 or 6 such rounds typically. Anywhere, I think the ballpark is anywhere between 5 to 7 or 4 to 6 rounds you will have, including all these different rounds. Okay. And generally, apart from that initial screening, where the first round is generally the phone screen round, we call that PS1, PS2 generally, that to kind of segregate from serious contenders to not so serious contenders. Somebody who has applied just for the sake of it, and somebody who is really serious about and seriously trying about getting into Amazon, and at the right technical level, not very kind of, complete misfit. So we segregate that. Once we do that, once you go into, we call this loop. You must have read this term
Yeah.
in online as well. We call that loop. Loop is basically a round of multiple rounds of questioning from different people. And as I said, 3 to 5 rounds is the one after phone screen is done, depending on, again, which department, which level you are applying for what role it is, etc. And then we have this process called, once everybody has done their interviews, we have gone through 3 or 4 or 5 rounds, then it will be made, the decision will be made collectively, thinking or looking at the feedback from every single round. Okay, very important. It's not like, you complete one round, you go second to third, third to fourth. It's not like that. Okay, a lot of people think I've gone through 5 rounds of interviews, that means I was cleared all 4 rounds, then I moved to 5, so obviously my chances of getting into is very high. That's not the case. It's a collection. After you initial first round, the initial screening round, it's all loops. We are
It is
taking
not
all of your,
knockout.
yeah,
It
it's
is
not
not
something.
knockout.
Yeah, that's right. So that is there. And then we have this process called debrief, where we sit. So all the interviewers, so let's say in this example, so let's say Ashish and Prasad and myself, we were in your interview loop, and Perna as well. Okay, so what we will do, we will then sit in a room, again, physically or virtually. We'll discuss, and we will discuss, okay, I in my round, this is what Pawan did really well, this is what he can do well, right? And like that, we all put forth our points. Ashish and Prasad and myself and Parna, all of us will put, and based on that discussion, we will kind of, do this kind of a yes or a no thing for you. Okay. Another sort of myth buster here. A lot of people think that there is a concept of bar raiser in Amazon, and a lot of people think that the bar raiser has got the sort of supreme authority. He or she can do a veto and can say, okay, like the person is okay. If I want, I'll get the person in. Let's say I'm the bar raiser. I want the person. I want Pawan in. But you have impressed me, like, like anything in your interview round. I want you in, and you have done miserably in Ashish's round, or let's say Prasad's round. So I can take you in? No, I can't. I mean, it's again collective. Everybody has to be in that decision. Unless everybody is a yes, we don't do that. It has to be a decision from everybody, right? So that's again an important point. So yeah, I'm just thinking, looking at the notes. So again, we do have things, but yeah, I think I'm kind of about done here in terms of analysis, in terms of the feedback. Um, so yeah, I think about it. If there are any questions, I can take.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of questions. We'll go through that, and I want to demystify one more thing. First thing, Pawan, you did great. You obviously were able to have lots of a question answered, and it was interesting to see the thought process. One thing I want to clarify about bar raiser is that why that bar raiser interview is there into the loop.
Mm,
Let's consider a situation. I am hiring manager. I have a resource crunch. I need 10 people to join my team ASAP. Right. Now, what I would do that I may want to cut corners because I want to fill the manpower. I want to generate revenue. I want to hit my target, and I need my resources as fast as possible. So if I have to check for 100% of a person, even if I'm finding 95, I may say yes because I'm inclined towards getting my business on track, hit my target, or fulfill the resource crunch I have. So bar raiser would be a person who is coming from probably not at all in that domain. Maybe it would be coming from Alexa. Maybe it would be coming from, let's say, Prime Video. So they are negating the business priority impact on the interview process. So if I'm a bar raiser, I do not know what Sharique team is doing, why they need this resource, how important it is. I am checking him or her purely based on what principle he or she is bringing into AWS or not. So to negate that business priority impact on the interview, that's why a bar raiser comes into picture. So they basically nullify any business priorities which may impact interview decision. So that is the idea of a bar raiser.
right. I mean, to bring in the objectivity, that's what we call
Exactly.
to bring in the
Exactly.
objectivity into that whole interview process for a candidate.
Great.
Yeah. One thing
Nice.
I would like to talk about how well Sharique conducted the interview.
I agree.
It's very interesting. So if you see, like,
Mm,
it's very important that to understand that you as an interviewee is actually driving the interview. So Sharique was just picking on the things that Pawan said.
mm,
So and he started talking about that more. Because see, when an interview talks about something, then as an interviewer, I feel that that means that person would have worked on it already. So I can dive deep into it. But if the person is, let's say, talking about containers, and if I start talking about, let's talk about generative AI,
mm.
interview is not trying to find your weak spots.
Very
Interviewer
important
is
point.
trying to interview is trying to find your strengths and see whether or not you're good at those strengths. If you are,
True.
so be very careful about what you are mentioning in your intro. Be always, like, precise and concise, but drop in those keywords that you want the interviewer to pick and ask questions on. In that ways, you will be actually leading the interview, not the interviewer. Because see, essay or any other role is such a vast space that even
Exactly.
if we get the right match for few of the topics, it will be good as long as the person is really dive deep into it. So
Mm,
use that as a cue and
mm.
drive the interviews on your own.
I mean, very good point, Prasad. In fact, this is what I used to do. Now, technical training is a different domain altogether. But when I used to take a lot of interviews for DevOps roles, and DevOps, anybody who is familiar here will know that it's a hundreds of different tools and technologies, right? So it's not one thing is there. So hundreds. So my typical response, how I would start an interview would be, my first question typically would be, see, we have hundreds of technologies. Tell me the three things which you are most comfortable with. Let's say the person comes up with Ansible and perhaps Docker and perhaps, let's say, Kubernetes or Chef or whatever the tool is. Then I will try to kind of mold the questions in those technologies if I'm aware. If I'm not aware, let's say there is something which I've never worked on, then I'll ask him, can you give me one or two more technologies which are comfortable? So finding that balance, and one very important point I want to want to share with all of you here. This I got from one of my debriefs and for one of the roles there. One L7 bar raiser, I remember his words very clearly. He said it very nicely, and that kind of struck me really hard when it comes to how we take interviews at Amazon. He mentioned very nicely in one of the debriefs. One of the tech panel was not very happy with the candidate. He was, he kept on picking. Say, for example, in Pawan's round, I can focus on his strengths and I can focus on his weaknesses, right? I can tell, no, Pawan did not do this well. He said very nicely, he said, see, at Amazon, we find things for which we can hire people. We don't find things for which we need to reject people. So focus on his strengths, not don't focus on weaknesses. And if you have enough strengths, if the person is a cultural fit, why not?
Why not? So, on that note, so any
Mhm.
question that you're not aware of, do not shy away saying at all that, like, I do not know it,
Very
and
true.
I'll get back to you. Pawan, you did it at some points, you did great, at some places you did say that, I'm not sure about it. And, I think we can do it, but I'm not 100% sure, which is good. if you can, always try and add, I'll have to check and come back. Like, because you're doing a role play. So in general, when we are talking with a customer, so see, I'm a Microsoft specialist. If a customer asks a very dive deep question about networking, which I'm not aware of, I simply say that I do not know about it, but let me go check and come back. And then I pull in a networking specialist if required. So you'll have other, there were a lot of questions on the chat that, how can you know about so many products and services? You don't need to know it. Just focus on your T-shaped. Have one specialty that is important. At least there should be one thing that you can dive deep on, whether it is databases, networking, XYZ, it doesn't matter, but have that one specialty. But know a high level about something. It doesn't mean that I'm a Microsoft specialist, so I'll not even know what VPC is. I need to know what VPC is, but probably not, like a complex enterprise network architecture. Cool.
Yeah, and we don't expect anyone that person would be a superman or superwoman who knows everything.
Right.
If you are that kind of a person, then probably you are hired automatically. But we don't expect everyone to answer every question. It is inhuman to expect that, because the technology is so vast, your background is so vast, and different positions are different. So it is completely okay to say no. One good gesture would be like, if you say no and say I would get back to you, probably you could reach out to that recruiter afterward. Who are you in contact? Maybe you do not have person directly's contact detail, but to recruiter they, hey, this was the question asked to me, I did not had answer for that, but now I figured out and now I am replying back, and probably you could relay this information to him or her who was interviewing me. So that actually gives you one more point to leverage on, that now you are keen, you are doing your research, and at least even if no response came, at least you are now aware about that concept which you did not know. So no harm in doing it, because you are researching and learning from it. So that's another good thing. Thank you. And
Let's
one
take few
thing I felt,
questions.
Pawan, like little bit of acknowledgement could be there. Means again, I'm very, very critical in terms of when I judge people. So acknowledgement in the sense that when Sharique finished one question, I could have asked, okay, does it answer your question? Do you want me to go a little bit more in depth? So what I prefer, like I start with basic information first, and then I check interest of the interviewer, that if she is interested or he is interested to go more deep in that, then I reveal the whole information. So I give a demo, and then I reveal the expanded information if the need be.
Sure.
So that could be a trick to save time and be focused.
Right. On that, I just want to do a follow-up thing what Ashish just said. Like, it's very important to time your question. Time in the sense that, I mean, your answer, your responses. What I have seen, again, taking so many interviews at so many different places, I've seen some people, this is a very common, people have this assumption that if I just keep on talking, that's a good thing. It's not a good thing. Okay, you should know when to start and you should know when to stop. You are basically wasting my time if you keep on talking, right? And if I every second response, if I have to tell you, okay, Prasad, can you stop now? Okay, Ashish, can you stop now? If I have to do every second response, that means you're not clear in your head. You don't know what to answer and you're trying to put just everything there. Right? So it's very important to time your question and structure your response properly. It's very important.
Yeah. And on that, what Sharik mentioned, like every time, so think about this, take the clues from the interviewer also. If the interviewer has said once that, let me stop you here, that should give you a cue that from the next time you should not be repeating that mistake. Right?
Yeah.
So
Very important.
I get it.
see, think about it. It's a two-person conversation, right?
Right.
And so pick on what the other person is talking about. So you are putting in keywords so that the other person can hear and ask questions about. If the other question is giving you a small red flag, I'd not say red flag or orange flag, that you are going in this wrong direction, or let's course correct. Like for example, when Pavan finished our answer on application side and started moving to database, Sharik did mention that hold on to that, we'll come to database, but we will, like let's talk more about containers. That means there is a more dive deep required there. So pick on those small things and then see how you can shape the interview.
Correct.
Great. Now, in the interest of time, I would take two questions. Our next guest is already here, and we don't want to keep her wait for long. So I will pick two questions here in interest, and Shariq, I'll let you answer it. So first question I have from Asna is, what would be your suggestion on an average answering time for a tech question?
Okay. That's again subjective, Asna. And what Ashish mentioned, a very, very important clue. Don't give all your, details right at the beginning. this is, again, think of it like a two-way conversation. And if I take an example of, let's say, that question which I asked, like, containers. So you start with a basic response like, okay, so we have multiple different options. You can have Kubernetes based, non-Kubernetes based, and then you ask the interviewer, okay, Sharique, would you like to know more about which one you are using? Are you using Kubernetes on-prem, or you are not using Kubernetes on-prem? Because that's based on that you go into direction. So there is no such thing as how much time. It could be 2 minutes. Important thing is that two kinds of questions. One is straight yes or no, or close-ended questions, we call them, where you just give the response. I'll ask you a question like this: do you have a service which has support for Kubernetes on AWS? And the answer is one word: yes, it is EKS. That's it. I'm not asking more details. But let's say if I ask you a question, the same question, but I ask you in this manner, that I've heard that there is a service on Kubernetes which helps you in a much better way, and you have some extra capabilities on AWS which you can utilize. Can you tell me more about it? Then probably you need to structure a question for 3-4 minutes, and then you explain basic things about Kubernetes and then about EKS. Maybe if you're aware, some pros and cons with some other industry standard tools, if you have the familiarity. So you can structure that way. But I would say 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes is a very long duration. It's long enough in an interview. Okay. And of course there'll be follow-up questions, because obviously once you respond to something, I will ask you a follow-up question on that. So I guess you should keep it not more than 5 minutes, any single answer.
Makes sense, makes sense. Hopefully that answers the question from Asna. So that's all. The other question, Parna answered them, Prasad answered them on the chat. So I would like to take a pause here because we are a little bit of over time, and I want to give everyone 5 minutes to collect their thoughts and come back to our next session. So thank you, Pawan. Thanks, Sharique. And if you have
Thank
any questions, feel free to send across. We may get time from Sharique and get them responded into the LinkedIn messages. So feel free to get in touch. And if you enjoyed the session, please appreciate Pawan's and Sharique's effort. Yes, it is important to acknowledge both effort because it's not easy to be on the face of camera and face
That's
question live for people and like hundreds of people watching, and they would
okay.
be watching hundreds more in a YouTube live. So thanks Pawan for that, and thanks Sharique for sharing the tips about a better interview.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks
Thank you for
everyone.
the opportunity.
Let's take a 5 minute break. Sharique, you were saying something. Sorry.
No, just saying thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, it's always good to have people like you, Pawan and Sharik, to understand and how the actual things happen. So we'll take a 5 minute break, and then we would have our next guest, Simran, who would be talking about another aspect of technical role. So enjoy everyone, 5 minute break, and we would be starting soon. I would be putting a 5 minute timer so everyone knows when to come back, and hopefully you would be having a good time and enjoying the session. If you have any questions, any suggestions, feel free to put them into chat, and if we have time we would be happy to answer those questions. So I'm sharing my screen, and we will then 5 minute break, we'll start again. Thank you everyone, take a good one. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is back and had an interesting session. There was a lot of insight on it. So, if you want, please rewatch the session on YouTube because it's not easy to understand the complex interview process and no harm in revisiting the content. Now, I'm going to the next section and going to add Simran on stage. Hi, Simran.
Hello, everyone.
I'm not sure we're getting an echo from the voice.
Are you getting an echo?
That means I'm hearing my voice again.
All right. I don't. I'm hearing you
Okay.
quite loud and clear.
Uh, Prasad, Parna, can anyone confirm if you are hearing the voice again? Probably they are unmuting and talking. That's fine. Okay. So, Simran, could you please introduce yourself and talk about like who you are, what your journey been, what is your role in IBM to give a little bit idea to audience.
Sure. I think firstly, I would want to say thank you for inviting me, specifically to Parna Mehta, as we have some shared work that we do at one of the organizations in India called Aspire for Her. And, she reached out to me to talk to the community. And then we, agreed on this subject. And I'll come to it why this subject is important based on my own journey. So, like the community, since it's about solution architects, I started my career, as a technical person, as a developer, and I did that for 13 years, lots of different roles as a developer, as an architect, as a team leader, as when agile was sort of very new, did those roles and many other roles that may not even have a lot of formal titles. And one of the patterns that emerged over time was lots of projects were succeeding and failing when there were always, technical reasons. And fast forward today, that what I do over the last 10 years, and I've sort of shifted my focus in my work, is leading technical teams to deliver solutions for our clients. Amazon AWS is a huge partner at IBM. So I'm a partner at IBM Consulting, where I lead a large team where we are delivering a myriad of technology solutions, supporting our client businesses. Pretty much what AWS does as well, both independently and also in partnership with IBM. So I think the reason I chose this topic, in addition to my own personal experience, but it's something even in my current job, I see that there is a pattern and how some technical leaders get really differentiated on certain skills in addition to having technical skills. And I was here now, 15 minutes earlier and backstage and listening to the previous session, which creates a wonderful segue for this conversation. And I myself took some notes already in the last 15 minutes about, some human skills that we talk about is, taking your time, saying I'm not ready or I don't know the answer right now, but I can go check, listen more. Um, and I think the other one was, time, pick your timing, one of my favorite ones, time responses. So it's a perfect segue. And what I really want to do is today share some of my experience, some of the skills that I think are important, and the patterns that I see. And then I want to really open up the floor for questions because there are some really live scenarios that I'm sure the audience have experienced. And I'd really like them to ask those questions so I could share what I would do today or I do today based on what I know now versus what I did not know 10 years ago.
Great. So, uh, s- uh, Simran, would you be able to mute for a while? Somehow
Yes.
I'm getting the echo. Sorry. Yeah, thanks for that. So I agree that as is also mentioned by Parna that human skill is an important factor. Now I want to go into very basics. So we already have human skill. Why we need to highlight it? What is missing? What is the missing part? Because if it is a human skill, everyone should have it. Then why we need to have a identification done on it? Are we losing those skills or are we not paying attention to those skills? Why is it happening?
So it's a very good question. And I must confess that I didn't even think about it before starting this session. Um, I think we all have it. We are not using it professionally. Not everybody. It's like, you would meet a lot of people where They are very comfortable when they are in their family environment, friend environment. They're very comfortable speaking up, even giving honest feedback. But the moment something changes, the moment they're in their work environment, something changes. Not everybody is as open and vocal and honest, while in the background they would be, sharing concerns, but those conversations are not coming out to the table. So obviously, partially it has to do with an organizational culture, but also partially how people see these two as two different things. That I can do this in a safe environment or with people I know, but I can't because I don't know them. And the key point here is that you have to learn the vocabulary, the language of saying it, even to somebody you've not met, but in an extremely, humble, respectful, sometimes assertive manner. So it's a skill that needs a little bit more polishing compared to what we do in a normal day-to-day environment.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
So
So,
I'll let you drive, and then I'll ask question in between.
Great, thank you. I think before I start, I'm assuming this is a very active community. I want to ask a question to the community, and you can just write it in the chat for me to get a sense of what's your interpretation of human skills. What do you think some of the words that come to your mind when we talk about human skills? And I can also read the chat. So let's see if we hear some words. Communication to fellow human beings. Absolutely. I think communication is one of the most important ones. Something which differentiates us from machines. Wonderful communication. Yes. What about other skills in addition to communication? Sensitivity. Yes, absolutely. Effective listening. Yes, another great one. Come on, team. If you're going to get some takeaways from this session, let's get active. Acknowledgement. Yeah, that's a great one. Absolutely. As a really important one as part of leadership development. Let's take a few more. Body language. I was hoping somebody would say that. So thank you, Sharique. Body language, listening, and clarity of thought. Humility. Yes. Understanding the situation, absolutely. Always taking stock of the situation. So yeah, keep it coming. Really wonderful. And the reason I wanted to ask this question was to really get a sense of, where the community is, and then we'll get to it, how effectively you use it. So then I'm going to ask, a follow-up question, and you can just say yes, no in the chat, right? How many of you, especially technical people who are in technical delivery role, product development, and explaining technology to a lot of people. How many of you have been in meetings where a senior client leader or your executive in the organization says, plain English, please, or explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, or there was one more I had in my notes, I'm not technical, so speak my language. Does that sound familiar in meetings? And you go back like, gosh, these guys don't understand anything. They don't know technology enough. How can I explain it all to them? I can't work with them. Enough times to keep count. Yes, Sharique, I've had that too in my early years in my career. And, the key learning that I've had is it's not their job to know all that. What our job as technical leaders is to be able to really explain it to them. Instead of Kubernetes cluster is not working, let's try and explain in plain English what the problem is. And I think many a times we don't put a lot of attention to that. If I give you a day-to-day example, nobody really cares what Facebook, what Instagram, what this tool that we are today using is made on which technology. It's important to, of course, the technical and developer community, but people who are doing the sales for these products, promoting them, creating marketing materials, they need to understand, where am I using this? Why is it important? What is the differentiator? How should I write it in plain, simple English words? And I think a lot of times I've seen, and I see time and time, even in my current role, some of the outstanding technical people running into this block where there is this, sort of, uh, for the lack of a better word, a rift that they think I know what I'm saying and the other person is not following. And when they try to articulate that, many a times, a lot of technical people either have an aha moment or they feel, oh, but that's oversimplification. So, and I think the important thing is that if we can't explain anything simply, I think we have not understood ourselves. And I'm really saying it we, because I love technology, and I still have a lot of times have to hold myself to, getting my hands dirty with doing stuff. But given my current role, it's really important that I can explain things to people, whether we are running into a challenge or we are doing something very new or we are trying to do something first of a kind. Why is it all of that? And that is the skill that I'm talking about, which of course roots from communication, but it's a blend of critical thinking, it's a blend of teamwork, it's a blend of collaboration, it's a blend of thinking about the customer, it's a blend of the solution we are trying to build, the problem we're trying to solve. What is the difference I should have in experience? A handwritten letter works well as an email, but there are some benefits and there are some disadvantages. Those are the things we need to learn to articulate above sort of the architecture of why this is great. And I see also in my work, it's a general, I think, a technical community challenge that every time we're looking at products, the focus is a lot on what's the latest top-notch technology, or the latest, in the market today, being Gen AI, we are using, versus focusing on what is this new technology doing better than what the experience we had when we didn't have that technology. So I hope that resonates with all of you. In addition to some of the skills that I've mentioned, I personally will add one of the critical skills that over the last 3-4 years I have observed and also personally focused on developing as I've grown in my career, is having a very clear, calm mind. I think there was a point in the chat that somebody from the community mentioned. I cannot emphasize the importance of it. As long as you focus on having a clear, calm mind, I think a lot of these human skills will automatically fall in place. And there are many ways of developing a clear, calm mind, each to its own. What I focus on is a lot of course, meditation, a lot of self-time, a lot of reading, a lot of sort of biographies and business books to understand how other people, solved the challenges and, took the help of their teams. The other critical skill that I see that many a times a lot of technical people tend to focus on solving it by themselves. We all take pride in knowing technology, but taking help and asking for support or guidance or sparring is one of the best strengths that you can apply to your work. It's inclusive. It creates impact with others. It makes you more human, not a superhuman, not perfect, where you're reaching out for help and talking to your colleagues, and that also helps you practice your own skill of articulating the problem where you're hitting a wall. All right. So I will take a few seconds of pause here and see if there are some situations the team here has dealt with and they want to bring forward, and we could have a dialogue. I'm not here to give solutions. I'm only here to tell you how I would approach this if I was in that situation today. And perhaps in some scenarios, I could tell you how I would have approached it 10 years ago when I didn't have the skills that I think I have them today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
taking
taking
question from
question from
audience would be
audience
now.
would be now.
Now,
Now,
I have a
I have a
question,
question,
Simran.
Sure.
Simran.
Again, I'm
Again,
getting
I'm
the
getting
echo,
the
so
echo, so
can I
I'll
ask
can I
you
mute.
ask
to?
you
Yes, of
to?
course.
Sorry for that. Now, like the situation you have presented is very common. Like I am into a room where a lot of people are there. Now, consider a situation, and that happened with one of the BESA participants, that they had an interview. In that interview, they had technical people as well as non-technical people. So now they want to balance things out because they don't want to go too deep. So these non-technical people feel left out, and they don't want to sound so shallow that technical people will think that this person knows only superficial knowledge. So how to balance when you have a room full of technical as well as non-technical people?
So I think in a technical interview, if you're fundamentally technical, you would be acing the technical interview, right? Because it'll be so natural to use the technical vocabulary and convince the technical part of the interviewer saying, yeah, he or she knows, what they're talking about. I think the bigger challenge is for the non-technical community to explain it to them. So what I would do today, if I'm interviewing and there's a room of, I don't know, like 10 people, half technical, half non-technical, every time I will explain a technical concept or a technical answer I would give, I would take 30, 40 seconds and translate that if I were to say it in a non-technical way or in a plain English manner, this is how I would explain. Or this is what my explanation would be, or my understanding would be. So I think it's really important to also bring them in so that they're not feeling like, oh, this is all technical, I don't know what to ask. And I think in the previous session, there was a very good point mentioned about giving cues to your audience. This is a great way to give cue to your non-technical audience to help you ask questions.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Completely makes
Completely
sense.
makes sense.
Now,
All
Now,
right. I think we've got
I
some questions if you want to
yeah.
I'll go on mute.
uh, there is a question on, yeah, Sharique is mentioning about analogy. So yeah, that could be one way of explaining thing to non-technical people. Now, not sure whether it would be relevant to this talk or not. Simran, I'll let you decide if you want to answer this or not. How to introduce yourself?
Yeah, that's a much broader one, but I mean, very briefly, I would always recommend put your thoughts down on a paper. Talk to yourself like you're talking to yourself. One thing I've learned, at least, that has always worked for me, that if I'm convinced the way I'm saying something, I think I will be a lot more comfortable convincing somebody else. And the challenge is that we expect, our audience to be convinced on anything, whether it's your introduction or an answer to a question, when we ourselves are not convinced. So it goes back to, I think everybody sort of talks about it. Stay true to yourself. Write some descriptions on how you feel comfortable talking about. Practice it a little bit. Take help from some of your trusted colleagues and friends and perhaps family members, and ask them, am I sharing too much? How do I make it brief? Can I emphasize on something that I'm maybe scared of? Everybody has chips on the shoulder that they think they want to talk about, but they are unsure about talking. And I think it's really important to find a way how to still share it without feeling being judged. I'll give you a perfect example from my life. I once took a job where I moved on after 11 months. And for me, it was a dream job. I thought I was going to be there forever. But when I started working there, I realized it's outstanding. I'm working with one of people who've been my idols in my early career. When I started from a technical background, they were authors of books, and they knew deep down everything. And within 10, 11 months, I realized this is going to be very academic for me, because that's the focus of the company versus doing a lot of hands-on work that I was interested in. So I moved on, and over time, and after that, for multiple years, I was always unsure, do I mention that? Do I not mention that? Because it was very important to mention that, because that company was very well known in their space. So it was, a matter of pride as well. But at the same time, I moved on so quickly, I was always wondering how to explain. So the way today I explain that is, look, when I took that job, that was my vision and ambition. But when I was on the inside and I did the work for 11 months, I even wrote a technical paper, which is today, published on Microsoft's site, although it's now, 12 years old, still holds true for the tech back then. But the way I see it is, it's better to course correct quickly instead of sticking around in the job for 3 years, because it's going to look great on my resume, but I would not be happy. And I ended up moving on to something that I really enjoyed and took those skills forward into that role. I've not failed with that answer at all, because I'm admitting I realized I made a mistake, or I realize it's not right for me. And then I immediately course corrected. It's both good for me, it's both good for that employer not to have an unhappy person and somebody not doing, her best job. So especially the chips on the shoulder that we all have, I think we should look at how can we communicate them as our strengths versus weaknesses. And the other one that I see in introductions, about lateral moves. A lot of people are quite concerned about, oh, I made lateral move, I didn't, climb the ladder, because that's our normal way of thinking, that in careers we should always just be climbing up and not making lateral moves. I cannot emphasize the importance of lateral moves. And if any one of you have made them, please do bring them forward, because every time you make a lateral move, you are actually doing it for a skill that you didn't have before. So if you make 2-3 lateral moves, you've sort of developed a holistic profile. It's much better to take a bigger jump with those 5 skills as foundation versus having 2 and make the jump because it looks great. Again, there are lots of people do it and it works for them. But in case if you think that's a chip on your shoulder, please see that as a positive sign, and bring it as a reason why you took those jobs. So I hope that answers. I'm not a job expert. I'm not an introduce yourself answer expert, but that's how I approach to introductions now.
No, that
No,
that
that
answers.
answers.
I want to pick up another question from Parna here, and that is about, are human skills only relevant for techno managerial role? What about individual contributors? I do not talk to people. I just do my job, finish it, done. I do not have a lot of interaction. So is it
Is
still
it still
important for
important?
me?
But I think fundamentally it's really important for your own well-being, because when you're also a independent individual worker, and many are, and they're very good at that. Many people openly say in my teams that I don't want to work with sort of large teams. I'm really good at what I do and I just want to be a master. That's great. But at some point in time, you also have to explain yourself, why am I doing this? What am I building? Where is it going? Who is it using it? It's not just my program and it's done and there's a screen and people can input. You're going to get feedback, and it's not about fixing technical issues. So I think for your own personal well-being as well, it's really important to be articulate that well. And even if you're an individual worker, you're never going to be working in a complete silo alone. You'll at least still be working with 2, 3, 4 people, if not 20, 30, 40. Just in that realm, if you're able to contribute and even communicate effectively on your technical concepts, it is still going to help you. So I wouldn't undermine that quality, or sorry, I wouldn't undermine the importance of that skill, even if you are largely working on your own. And I'm a half a sort of introvert extrovert. So for every 2 hours of extroversion I need to do, because my job demands that, I need 4-5 hours of introversion, because I do my best work also on my own. But I do spend a lot of time taking lots of inputs. That comes to the point about critical thinking, that you take all that input, but then you still have to sit by yourself, put it all together, make some sense of it, and create the work that you need to create based on all of those inputs. So I think it's equally important for somebody working with smaller, or a 2-member team, or all by himself or herself, versus somebody managing a larger team.
That makes sense. That's completely relevant answer. Now, I want to pick up a question from Sharique here. That would you agree that soft skill play an increasingly more important role in your professional success in the last decade or so, irrespective of role or level?
The short answer, Sharique, is absolutely yes, a resounding yes, undoubtedly. However, I would not call them soft skills, and I know we all say that. But if anybody here is a fan of some of the work that Simon Sinek does, he calls them human skills, which is why the subject I chose also was human skills, because there's no soft or hard about the skills, right? So the answer is yes, that it has helped. And the reason behind is because as you grow in your career, essentially career growth is what? It's larger and larger responsibility. Even from a technical perspective, you would be building maybe instead of a module in a larger product, you'd probably be responsible for the entire product, which could have 20, 30, 40 modules. So you'll end up working with 20 product teams or 40 product teams. And again, those skills are really important to both understand them, what they are doing, connecting the dots, as we call it, like the red thread, that you have to connect the dots to see how the whole overarching product looks like, but you've got 20 verticals underneath. And then to be that strong leader that people follow or understand where that person is coming from, these skills are undoubtedly very important. And I would say that yes, I credit them for the last decade of growth.
Makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
And I have a question, Simran, about so can it's obviously there are too many skills and it's not like a very rigid plus minus or black and white way of answering things, but what could be some common skill which every individual should have, every person, tech or non-tech field? Maybe if I talk about those three skills, and then a follow-up question would be, let's say if you say X skill and if I do not have that, what I could do to have that incorporate. Obviously I would not be able to like sprout it from nowhere, but if I have a spectrum which is on lesser side of it, how I could enhance it so I will be seen more as practicing that skill. So top three skills, and if you lack them, what you could do to develop them.
I would recommend my three recommendations would be critical thinking, and clear communication, and a calm mind. And the reason I'm adding calm mind to my top three is because I've seen time and time again smartest of the people tripping because the mind is not calm. We've got lots of chitter chatter going in the head, or sometimes in the rush of being unheard, because we want to be heard, we want to say something, but we mumble fumble, as we say it. So for me, those three things are really important. Lots of other skills when it comes to leadership, team building, collaboration, etc. Those you can learn on the job by putting yourself in those kind of roles where you are almost forced to do that. So you're going to develop those skills by just learning some, making some mistakes and thinking it, okay, where did I go wrong, what could I have done differently? But independently as an individual today, and I might change my mind 6 months from now, but today I would say critical thinking, calm mind, and communication, especially if you can focus on learning to write brief. And today we have Chat GPT. You can literally write the way you write and tell Chat GPT, rewrite this for me briefly, and just learn the response and see if when you read that brief answer or brief sort of version of your own text, does that make sense? The more we can convey in lesser words, the bigger the impact and the lesser the energy it takes from you.
Makes sense. And what can I do to exercise these things? Like a calm mind, like could be things like yoga or maybe music or maybe reading a book or something. But how about I enhance my skill for critical thinking and clear communication? And
And
even any
even
more
any
advice for calm mind too?
So those are, firstly, these skills take a little bit of time and a lot of commitment from yourself as an individual, and also an acceptance that I do need to develop in these areas. I really, really want to. That's number one. Unless we admit that we need to have these changes and have these skills, we will not do the work, right? The second thing is a lot of reading. Both around, I don't read fiction. It's not that I don't like it. I think it's great, but I don't want to say that I read enough to say that I read fiction. I read probably once or twice a year, but I do read a lot of biographies, business about companies, how they've sort of stayed and how they are transforming, and from that you start picking up the cues, how somebody analyzed some information. And then thirdly, you have to apply those learnings. And I experiment. My role, of course, does give me a lot of operating space in applying those learnings. But even if I go back 10 years ago, even at a smaller scale, I started applying them, starting to communicate differently than I did before as a technical person, or putting myself in front of leaders where I needed to communicate and prepare. So I prepared, and you can't prepare enough. I think one of the things I've learned is that not underestimating preparation. And even for this session, I prepared. I have my notes, but I'm very comfortable now, adapting. So you sort of, flow like water. But I would say that to summarize, for any learning, there are 3 steps. One is acceptance, I need to learn. Second is you start reading. And third is you start applying, right? You tell your colleagues that I am focused on this change. And for that, I am reading this. And that's the skill or that's the learning I'd like to apply. So I have an interesting example. I think probably more than a year ago, I read an article which said that the CEO used no secrets meetings. Once a week, he did a no secrets meeting with his team, and I quite liked it. So I started applying that with my team, and now we have a bi-weekly. I don't call it no secrets, but the message there is it's an open meeting. But I did share that, hey, I read this article and I thought it was a great idea. How about we all come together, my core team, and saying, let's do a completely open no secrets meeting. And that's worked well. And I've sort of adapted. Some things work, some things didn't, and adapt. And I think all of us can do that, at all the levels with your teams, or even as part of, if you don't have a direct team, but you're part of somebody's team, you can always make a suggestion. The other thing that I always encourage people is that every leader needs great suggestions. So if you're not a leader yet, or you don't have a lot of, a large team, or even one member, sort of under your team or under your sort of management, start making great suggestions. Start taking initiatives, offering, I'd like to lead it. The team will automatically form around it. Right? So those are the ways you can, develop these skills. And many of them I've done it. I'm a big fan of taking suggestions and also giving suggestions where I have the opportunity or when I'm even asked about those things.
Makes sense. And yeah, that is like good advice to enhance these skills. And I don't think these are like not required for any role. Any role, whether technical, non-technical, everyone would get benefited from it. Who doesn't need a calm mind? Everyone needs it, isn't it? Now, talking about a question which may be like putting you on a tough spot. Uh, how about if I have this skill and somebody is trying to use it for their advantage but my disadvantage? Let me take a hypothetical situation. I am taking an interview. I know this candidate is not raising the bar, but I have empathy with him or her because they have seen a lot of struggle. Now I am in a dilemma as a human. Should I take interest of my company front end and not hire this candidate, or should I hire this candidate because it is not there, but maybe 10%, 15% is missing? How I would be deciding as a human? A machine can decide very fast, but as a human, it would be difficult for me. So that's how what you would decide in that case.
I think if I'm in a situation like that, I would look at the candidate that do I want this person for an independent role where I'd like him to step up, raise the bar, get the team along, or do I want this candidate as part of the team where he has the opportunity to develop? If it's the latter, I think my hiring criteria will be slightly less strict. But if it's the former, then yes, I think I may take a stronger decision that there is sort of lack of raising the bar, or I miss the person that has not taken enough risks, or has not challenged himself or herself enough, because I need that in this role. But if not, then I think I would ask the question, like if you're put in a team where you are expected to raise a bar or you're expected to challenge yourself, how do you think you will approach that? Would you be comfortable with that? So then I'll go a little bit softer on that.
Makes sense, makes sense. And on the same interview side, like I'm influenced by the previous topics we had, like in the session. Uh, what if I'm an interviewer and I want to understand from a person like whether he or she has these type of skills or not? Would she be only taking decision purely based on technical things, or would he or she would consider the human factor too? So what could be those probing question I could ask to a candidate so that I know that he or she would demonstrate it when the time comes?
So I think one of the very interesting question that I have been asked many a times, and also I like to ask is, other than the job that that individual does. So let's say, if I'm interviewing you and I would say, well, other than the job that you do and your core skills that you have, what is personally important for you, in a role? That's one question. The other question I'd like to ask is, what is it that you don't like to do, but you still have to get it done? How would you approach that? And that question is, the second question is a lot more important for me, because there are lots of things we all have jobs, regardless of whatever our profession is. We all have tasks on our day-to-day life that we don't like, but it's part of our responsibility. So the focus shouldn't be on that I don't like it, so I can't get it done. The focus should be, I'm not good at it, or it's not my strength, but it's my responsibility. And that's where I need support, and I need the right person in my team to get it done. You need to ensure that you have the right understanding of how something should be done, what's the expectation, but you don't necessarily have to be the person actually doing the task. So I would see those kind of angles. That is the person comfortable in his or her skin, comfortable talking about what they don't like. It's really, really important. If I don't hear anybody telling me, no, I like everything, that's a big red flag to me, because nobody likes everything. And then thirdly, what is important for them in terms of whether it's work culture, or whether it's the clients they work with, or internal stakeholders they work with, depending on the role, of course. So the more they tell me about them, it gives me a sense of how well they know themselves. And the more you know yourself, the easier for you to be open about it when you need help, and also building these skills. At the end of the day, our human skills that we're talking today, whether it's technical roles or non-technical roles, they start fundamentally from being very comfortable in your skills, very comfortable in your skin and in your strengths, and very well aware of the strengths that you don't have.
Yeah, makes sense. Now I'm checking if audience have any question. Please feel free to put them into chat, and Simran would be happy to answer. Otherwise, we would like to hear from top tips from Simran about, or anything which we were not able to address. Please go ahead with that, Simran.
Oh, yeah, let's do a time check. Let me know how much time is left. Then perhaps we could give a few seconds for the audience to think and ask some scenario questions. And thank you also for asking some really, important questions. Ashish, they were great, especially the one on hiring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
means that
situation
situation
I had
I
faced.
had faced.
I was in
I
the
was in the
dilemma.
dilemma.
I
I
still
still
decided in
decided
favor of
on.
candidate, but it was a complication in my mind that am I making a right decision? Then I thought like, hey, I'm still into a loop, so there are more people who would be deciding before that candidate is hired, yes or no. At least from my side, I would push forward that candidate. So let her other have at least a chance to get forward on that. So thank you. Uh,
Yeah, indeed. And I think on that point, it's always helpful to take someone else's counsel when we are in a dilemma, right? Many a times when we are unable to decide ourselves, we are not deciding at all because we can't decide. That reminds me, many a times we send emails and we're expecting responses, but we're not getting them. And largely, it's because the other person doesn't have an answer. But many people don't respond back and saying, actually, I don't have an answer right now because I don't know what to do. But then they go silent. And then people waiting for responses are thinking, come on, they're not doing anything about it. Instead of perhaps going and checking with that person, I did send you an email. Did you have a chance? Or do you think you have an answer right now? So I think it goes both ways for the person sending that email, not expecting an immediate answer or expecting that the person should know an answer. And the person, of course, who doesn't have an answer steps up a little bit and says, I don't have an answer. I need a bit more time. So the other learning I've also had in life, professionally particularly, which is equally applicable to personal life as well, that every time you're in a dilemma, seek counsel, spar with somebody else, and share the context with them and ask them. And if they don't know, they will probably ask you to go, perhaps that's a better person. So it's almost like a link. Many developers here, so I would say it's almost like a linked list. If all of us have programmed in linked lists, that one thing leads to the other. The first one is to ask, and that of course brings us back to communication. Let's see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I pick up
I
one
pick up
question
one
from
question from
Asma, and
Asma,
that would be
and
the last one in interest of time. How will you handle a crunch situation when something unfinished by someone else was given to you and you have to get it done? Always happens.
Every day it happens. So um, I'll give you two sides of the answer, because I think one will resonate perhaps today, and then the other one is for the change that one should bring. If I go back to when I was very focused on all things technical, it was about me taking over and trying to do it, because I would assume it's my responsibility because somebody is gone and we have to do it. We have to step up, and there's just, without saying much words, there would be a, as rightly said, crunch feeling. Crunch creates stress and panic, and we have to do it, right? Today, the first thing I will do, and I think we did discuss in the previous session briefly, is take stock of the situation. Firstly, get together. If it's your responsibility and you have a team, please get together and take stock of the situation. Analyze how important it is. What is the impact? And if it's really, really important, what is it that we are currently doing? We should pause and we should prioritize that. So take stock, put down the key points, and then if you have to inform somebody that this is going to happen or we have to make some changes, communicate that first before executing on anything. I think we do the other way. We start executing before taking people along, and then everybody's confused. Nobody knows what you're doing, and it sounds like things are not under control. So that goes back again, links back to the having a calm mind. Take stock. Do you know enough before even taking an action on completing the task? I hope that helps. I think that was asked now.
Yep,
yep,
that
that
answers,
on.
I guess. So thank you, Simran. It was so insightful, and thanks for being here and sharing the knowledge, sharing the tips. And I hope this would help people become better professional, not just technically, but as a human. Somehow, like we are so engrossed into our technical stuff that we brush aside these skills, but we are technical later. We are humans first, so it's really really important. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you in some other sessions. Hopefully we would have more insight from you. This was focused, but maybe we could have
Have
other
other
sessions
sessions.
also where you could share your understanding and learning, and that would be helping all of us as beneficial.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And before I leave, I'd like to give back something that I think the team can immediately use. I would recommend 3 podcasts that, if you start listening, I guarantee you within the next 6 months, you'll see a lot of change in the way you also operate. The first one is The Diary of a CEO. The second one is The Path, which is by the CEO of LinkedIn. It's very new, and they're putting a podcast practice, I think, once a week. And they're short ones and they're really, really good. And the third one that I really enjoy is by Daniel Roth, who's the editor at LinkedIn, on This Is Working. And The Diary of a CEO is by Stephen Bartlett. If there's anybody coming from the UK, he's a big celebrity there because he's in Shark Tank UK. I recommend these 3 podcasts because these are people who are, senior leaders, and they share a lot about their journey and lots of small tips and tricks on how they've adapted and changed and things they did differently, before versus what they do now as they grew in their career. So I really hope that helps. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we would get these links that are listed in our resources page. So anybody who is listening later, they just want a link. So we would put those links into resources page. We have a website, Simran, where we put all these additional links. So we would get back to you and get those links and put it there. So thank you so much and hope to see you again. Thanks everyone for joining us. We have one more announcement to make, and for that, I would add Prasad to the session. So Prasad, I'm adding you to the screen. And thank you, Simran. Or we hope to see you into some other session. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Hey, folks. Yeah, today we are at the last session of the batch 4. And as Ashish mentioned, like now running into the Q4, it'll be very busy time for us with reInvent coming and other, like things coming. So most probably, and then it'll be Christmas. So there's no point in starting in December. So most probably we'll be starting the next batch in January. around mid-January, the early weeks of the January. But there was another thing that me and Ashish have been working on behind the scenes, and we would like to give you a glimpse on that a bit. So let me share my screen. It's a book that me and Ashish are working on to write, and hopefully we'll be able to release it, like in next few months. But what I'm going to share is I'm going to show at least the book cover and share some insights into what we are thinking about, like in writing.
Yeah, means today is the last episode. It doesn't mean that we are going away. We would not be taking like a what you call a winter sleep. We are still here. So in case you want to reach out, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. And we are trying to assimilate this information, use this time to maybe understand more ideas and then come up with a better suggestion for next. And then you could help us in there. So any suggestion, anything we feel it can improve, please help us. And this book is also on the same line that we want to help people in achieving the best from themselves. So this book title is Cloud Career Journey. This is a inspiring chronicle of people who have succeeded into cloud path. So idea is like we compile stories from people from different parts of the life, different background, different culture, different conditions, and showed their progress toward achieving a cloud career. Right, Prasad?
Yes, exactly. So, there is a lot of technical information available if someone wants to start with cloud. All right, there's a lot of like boot camps and even books and videos, but still people are confused about which path to take. Something that me and Ashish have noticed this while we have been mentoring a lot of people for the BESA, and the question comes is which path should I take or how I should go that path. And on the other side, there are a lot of people who have successfully been able to transition into cloud or have been able to excel in their cloud career journey. So that's how we thought, like if we are able to put together the stories of those people, and so that people can read and understand what paths others have taken, and if they can have the similarities and they can look into their own lives and see what journey they can take. So that's the whole idea of putting this to. It's not a technical book. It provides a journey of the people who have been able to successfully transition into cloud career, or they have excelled in their cloud career. People might have been from the IT background and they have excelled in the cloud career. So that's the whole idea of the book. And as Ashish mentioned, we are not going away anywhere. As you might have seen, we'll be more active on the BESA YouTube channel in terms of the short videos. So there'll be short videos coming up every week between now and the next batch. uh, that we are editing the older sessions so that it can be recycled, and like a lot of good information that Ashish has stored in all his technical sessions, we want to leverage that. So feel free to keep engaging on the LinkedIn group and on the YouTube channel. But yes, we would also be talking a lot about in the group about this book also, as we are getting closer to launching it.
Makes sense. And to just give you a little bit more idea on different type of personas we are trying to include here. So we are trying to include people who are coming from different backgrounds. So this is who would be featured in the book. So uh, we would be having people like pathfinders who were into different domain, and from there they struggled to find a better way and they paved the path to come into cloud. That is pathfinder. So we are trying to include like 2 to 3 stories which you could relate to. Then we have progressives who are having IT knowledge as their background, and then they progressed into cloud. Maybe they were into technology for a long time and then they came into this field of cloud. Undefeated, who had lot of challenges, who had to pave the cloud path against all the odds. Pinnacles, so it would be like on the top of the game. Then liberators who have helped other also. So to give you a little more idea on who are being featured in that, obviously you will find some of the BESA team members being featured here. So we would have Jamila, we would have story of Parna, we would be listening to them, you would be reading about them, that how they transitioned, how their journey looked. Then we are including people like Jeff Burr, who has been kind enough to write his own story for our book. So we thought we would interview him and then write his story, but he was so excited about the idea that he has written down his own story and is sharing with us. So we would be including that story into this. Then we have people who are coming from different backgrounds. So if you have heard about A Cloud Guru, probably you know Ryan Kruneberg. So we are going to include Ryan also into the story. So we had an interview with him last week, and then he is featuring that how he transitioned, how he built a multi-million-dollar empire, and how he transitioned multi-million people into the cloud. So that is going to be there. Then probably you have heard about John Bonso, who is Tutorial Dojo founder. So we have interviewed him also, and he would show that how he founded the company, how his cloud transition looked like. We're including Keisha Williams. She is a well-known name into machine learning. She is a AWS hero. So she would be also sharing her story, that how she started from a humble background and how she transitioned into the cloud roles and what setbacks, what challenges they face. So idea is to give the human side of their story. We all see the technical side, but we want to understand what challenges were, how they faced it, what solution they applied, what problem they fixed, and how they excelled into the career. So that is the main idea of the book. So obviously everyone would be able to pick up the book and would be able to relate to few people into the story, that hey, I can relate to Kesha, or I can relate to John, or I can relate to Parna or Jamila story. I have some background knowledge similar to that, or I have similar situation like that. So that is the idea of the story. So we have around 15 categories, 15 people divided into 5 categories, and we are trying to create a blend of people from background, technical, non-technical, male, female, and then other aspect like having a, like you would be finding people who are like a preacher or a pastor into theology, and then they transition into cloud and are now a principal developer advocate. So that's how we are going into this particular book. So we would keep you posted. We will keep sharing more detail as we move forward to the launch date. And if you are interested, reach out to us. We are looking for some reviewers, so we would be able to get your name into a list. And then when we reach to the point where we have reviewers required, or we want to have people give us feedback, then we would be reaching out to you, and then you could provide feedback, we could incorporate it, and hopefully it would help a lot of people in getting into the cloud.
Yeah. So idea is anyone, whether you are at the start of your cloud journey or whether you are far ahead, you would be able to relate to one or more stories in the book and find similarities and see how you can apply those learnings in your own journey. And as Ashish mentioned, yeah, like we would be kind of, let's say, beta readers or the reviewers. So yeah, if in case if you have bandwidth and you will be able to spare some time, feel free to reach out to us. Uh, yeah, so it's
That's
an
all.
interesting learning for even me and Ashish, speaking to
Yeah.
so many different people and, like knowing about their journeys. And, like me and Ashish both have been from technical background, kind of, but, when we spoke to people who have been from a totally non-technical background and how they have been able to switch and now become pioneers in cloud, it has been, like a very eye-opening journey. Especially like when you will read about Jeff Barr, like he shares his story about how he was able to reach a pinnacle, like he featured in the pinnacle category. uh, yeah, every story is unique, not going to reveal too much, I know, in the interest of the time. Also, as of now, we went overboard in this session. You always want to keep it within 2 hours, but yeah, sometimes we always go over time. So
So
I'm going to
thank you,
stop.
everyone. Thank you for your time. It was interesting to be here, and we are honored that you are still with us on the week 12. I know it's not easy to devote time on Saturday, but it is your interest and your support that what keeps us motivated too. So we need ideas. We are obviously a bunch of people who are thinking, but if we get a group who is thinking to betterment of everyone, obviously there would be more ideas coming up. So any idea could be as remote, as complicated, please share it. We are not promising we would work on every idea, but we will see what would benefit most people, and we are capable enough to implement it. We would be open to those suggestions. So hopefully you would be having more variety and more learning coming into the next best batches. But till then, have a good one. Thank you, Parna. Thank you, Sharique. Thank you, Pawan, for participating today. And Parna been like a backstage and arranging all the stuff. So you would not believe that all the guests, I would say probably all of the guests we had in behavioral session, Parna managed to get them, coordinate them, and then put a topic, communicate with them. So it was so much great work going behind the scene, which sometimes is not visible to you, but there is a lot of thought process and discussion going behind the scene when we create these sessions for you. So thanks everyone. We will be in touch, and please share your thoughts on LinkedIn, and afterwards we would be uh, reaching out with more detail. Parna, you want to come on screen probably for a minute?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
everyone,
I
please be active on LinkedIn as much as possible. Yeah, Parna, so good to see
Okay,
you on
hi.
the screen. Otherwise, like
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And even I can't believe like 12 weeks are over. So until the next time, thank you for the people who've been so faithful and have been coming back. And it was awesome having you here. Please come back, bring your friends, and share the videos and share all the links to Besa as well. And I hope you benefit from it. Thanks again. And thanks again, Prasad and Ashish. I wouldn't be here on this side if it wouldn't have been for both of them who
come
started
on.
this entire thing last year. So thank you again.
Just be
thank you,
happy to be
everyone.
part of your journey, Parna, in whatever small bits and pieces. But yeah, thank you. So thanks everyone, and again, have a good one. Keep yourself safe, keep yourself motivated, keep learning new things, and keep sharing. That is also important. So we hopefully would be meeting you soon in some other shape, form, and methods. But yeah, feel free to provide any feedback you have. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.